good Yule. This season is also associated with special foods. I can think of 4. First of all, let's talk about the Christmas pudding, or plum pudding as the Victorians used to usually call it. The tradition is that the housewife makes the pudding at least a month in advance of Christmas and puts it up in the airing cupboard, which is where the hot water heater is in a British home. It's hung in a pillowcase over the hot water heater to slowly ferment, I guess. And it contains a tremendous variety of preserved fruits and suet and dense contents that undergo an interesting fermentation process but don't quite solidify. It remains semi-solid. And when you prepare it, you are supposed to prepare it on the day when the weekly prayer in church begins with the phrase, "Stir up, O Lord, thy something something," which was known as Stir Up Sunday and was the signal to the housewife to prepare the Christmas pud. It was usually prepared in the bathtub in order to have a large enough place to stir it. And when you stirred your Christmas pud before putting it in the airing cupboard in the pillowcase, you stirred in certain secret things. The tradition I've heard is that you put in a thimble, a silver thimble, and a ring, a curtain ring I believe was often used, and a silver sixpence. And when the pudding came to be served at Christmas dinner, it was paraded in after having been placed on a plate and had sugar poured over it, and then it was and then brandy was poured over it, and it was quickly set alight. And the tradition is to march in the pudding blazing away merrily to the festive feast. And when the guests, when the people at the Christmas dinner get their share, the person who gets the thimble is never going to marry. The person who gets the silver sixpence will get wealth during the coming year. And the person who gets the ring is going to be the next to marry, probably during that year. A related tradition in America is the tradition of the redoubtable fruitcake. The fruitcake has similar ingredients to the Christmas pudding, but it's much, much denser. The whole point of the fruitcake seems to be to suspend fruit ingredients in a matrix that is solid enough that it can be drop-kicked by the postal service or lost at the back of the post office in goodness knows where and delivered 10 years later and still be as good as it was. Unfortunately, the necessity for it to be able to undergo these insults means that as good as it ever was is never quite edible unless you have teeth made of stainless steel. And I'm told they don't taste very good either. I guess that depends on the ingredients, and everybody says that their aunt or their grandmother has a recipe where it is in fact edible, but I don't believe I've ever spoken with anyone who has received one and managed to eat it. They traditionally get passed on from person to person. A common element between these two is the amassing of preserved fruits. And clearly this is about enjoying the products of summer and fall in the winter season and making a special meal of that kind. A similar tradition from where my parents grew up in England involves mince pies. Mince pies are usually made just like any other kind of pie, one big pie and you cut slices, and the mince in the name refers to mince meat. which is available in jars in English import stores in this country, in America, but doesn't seem to otherwise be common. It contains preserved fruits and sugar and I don't know what else, and lard or suet, something of that nature, which makes it not so unbearably sweet. It has an interesting bite to it, and it makes a wonderful pie filling. But the point about the Christmas mince pies is that you make them small, and the objective is to go to 12 Christmas parties during the Christmas season and eat a mince pie at each one, and that will bring you good luck during the 12 months of the year. And that's just about the only tradition I can think of which makes the 12 days of Christmas or Yule match to 12 months of the year, which is a scholarly perennial theory that that's why Yule is 12 days. But of course the heathen year is not 12 months, it's 13 lunar months, because that's how many lunar months fit into the year. And so the mapping to the months of the year just won't wash in a heathen context. It has to be based on the classical and came to be Christian concept of the year with 12 months. So it's interesting nonetheless that this is a Christmas tradition that combines the idea of the food that is celebratory by matching the other season of the year, the plenty of the non-winter, with the 12 months forecast. I don't know of any other examples that do that match the 12 months. And finally, in Scandinavia, they have to be different, of course. They eat in a celebratory fashion for Yuletide lutefisk, which is whitefish, usually cod, prepared by soaking for several days in water, followed by soaking for a couple of days in lye, which renders it poisonous, and then soaking again for a couple of days in water in order to render it not dangerous to one's health. And this glory of Nordic cuisine has to be cooked very carefully or it will fall apart, and it is then served with butter and traditionally pushed around the plate and not actually eaten. There are those who will say that somebody once told them that it tastes great. I'm not sure I wish to endorse the consumption of lutefisk, although I'm told it's still a tradition in the Midwest. I have so far managed not to consume it. I consider it a terrible waste of decent fish. It would be much better just to dry it. But I do understand that back in the old country, originally, lutefisk was not a celebratory meal at all. It was a traditional staple of the winter months. It was a standard method of preserving, an alternate to drying the fish. And so how come it came to be a celebratory Yuletide dish, I cannot imagine. But it's a very different approach to the fruit, unless you want to make a complicated comparison with the fruitcake, in which case I'm beginning to think maybe the Germanic reputation for masochism is not entirely unfounded. So I wouldn't recommend trying the lutefisk. Good Yule.